I was talking to my doctor. You know my doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombach. You know my doctor? Well, he told me last week in his office he got 6 cases of VD. I mean, he's all right now, you know. And my doctor, he don't help either. He told me to run 5 miles a day for 2 weeks. I called him up. I said, Doc, I'm 70 miles from my house. I'll tell you about trouble. I got the wrong doctor. You know my doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombach. You know my doctor? What a doctor. You kidding me? Well, that doctor, I called him up. I told him I had diarrhea. Put me on hold. Oh, he's a strange doctor.
Strange doctor.
Hey, you kidding? I asked him if my heart was strong enough for sex. He told me not if I join in, you know. I'll tell you my trouble. I got the wrong doctor. You know my doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombach. You know my doctor? What a doctor. Well, I called him last week. I told him, Doc, I swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills. He told me to have a few drinks and get some rest.
Good morning. It is Monday, January the 16th, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the daily declaration for spiritual warfare and the Star-Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance, we will have Go the Distance, Reagan, Peer Pressure, CNN versus Fox, No Free Lunch, The Rape of the Mind, and a special musical offering by Bellanova, and it's their rendition of Memories done in remembrance of Diamond from Diamond and Silk. All that and more when I come back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Your heart, face your parents, ready, begin.
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch.
People don't work to pay taxes. They work and invest for the after-tax return. Dr. Arthur Laffer. The simple point that Laffer makes here struck at the core of incentives in outlining a tax and economic policy that desperately needed more output after the stagflation of the 1970s. Marginal incentives to work and produce were devastated by high progressive marginal tax rates, and it was influencing behavior, not merely in behavioral decisions that affected capital, but labor as well.
And that was There's No Free Lunch, 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
We're here today to honor a man who dedicated his life to the pursuit of a dream. In honoring one man's commitment, we're also rededicating ourselves to the fundamental principle behind that dream. That principle, which goes to the very essence of America, is simply this: that it is self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Now, we'll sign the proclamation honoring the 59th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth.
Thank you. So there's I'm listening to a talk show host, and I don't know, somebody new I've not heard before, and in this particular time slot from I think it's 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon on KBC. Anyway, so he's talking about issues where it's what it is, a news item where a children's hospital is teaching kids how to tuck their genitals for, if you're going to be transgender or something, I guess. I don't know. So I'm listening to this, and he's talking about our society, and I keep thinking, okay, well, what does this got to do with me and you as individuals? Because we're not all in this together. We're in this joint and severally. Okay. So then he finally gets to the point where he understands, gets the message, so to speak, and he starts talking about, if you're the kind of parent that approves of this, we can't be friends. I can't even be civil with you. And I'm telling the radio, good, yes, because that's what you and I can do as individuals. If you know that your neighbors are out encouraging their children to be transgender or to get surgery prematurely to get their breast buds removed or whatever it is that they're doing, they're butchering up their children, you have the power of peer pressure, and you simply refuse to have anything to do with these folks. You don't talk to them. And this is what the radio show host was saying. I can't have a conversation with you, he said, because you disgust me. You're evil. And that's exactly correct. This is the way. None of this is being done with the law. Okay. The Congress didn't pass a law requiring children's hospitals to do this. This is all social. It is all peer cultural and peer pressure oriented. Okay. The whole idea is to set things up so that normal people are going to feel pressured to act abnormal. Be abnormal. Don't succumb. If the people, again, that you know are going to go ahead and abuse their children that way, one of the things you might consider is turning them into child protective services. Other than that, you ignore them. You have nothing to do with them. You don't talk to them, and whether or not you tell them why is going to be up to you, and whether or not you think that's the best idea. But that's the kind of thing you do. You put the peer pressure on them. It's like there's a lot of parents, left-wing parents, socialist parents that say, well, I'm going to let my kids, if they want to drink, I'm going to let them do it because they're going to do it anyways, which is false, because we're all moral agents. And children, and particularly teenagers, are moral agents as well. They know the difference between right and wrong, and they're going to act accordingly. So, and people think, well, if I just let it go, then he's going to make his own decision. No, if you let it go, it's tantamount to promoting it. It's tantamount to a wink and a nod. Hey, don't drink. Wink, wink, nod, nod. No. See, you're promoting it. Same thing with the government. The government can either be for something or against something. There's no neutral. And this is where the left tries to brainwash people. Be neutral. There's no neutral here. You either promote your kids having alcohol and getting drunk, or you don't. Okay? And so if you know that there's parents out there that are letting their kids get drunk, you don't have anything to do with them. You shun these people. And that's where you can have some power. That's where you can have some effect. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've been thinking for quite a while about this idea that that we as consumers are getting the opportunity to decide, whether it's the news or analysis. So many talk show hosts and news anchors say, we give you the facts and let you decide. The problem is they don't let us decide because they don't give us at least two sides to the story. So there's nothing to decide. To give you one side to the story, we give you the facts. That means you're giving me your facts and you're steering me in a particular direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually give you the opportunity to decide. I'm going to use the President Biden's classified documents issue as the subject matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play 9 minutes right now of CNN covering this. So CNN is going to cover this and they're going to have their say for 9 minutes. Then I'm going to play roughly the same amount of time for Fox. And then this way, you should actually be able to have a choice and actually be able to make an informed decision. So here we go with CNN, 9 minutes of CNN on the Joe Biden. This is called What We Know So Far About the Classified Documents, and it was done 4 days ago. So
defense information, and then beyond that, there was the open.
Well, today we're learning that President Biden's legal team found another batch of classified documents. A source saying these documents came in searches that began after the November discovery of the classified docs from now President Biden's time as vice president in an old office in Washington, D.C. So the question really is, what does this mean for the president? How are we just now learning about this? And also the DOJ going forward. Joining me now, CNN special correspondent Jamie Gangel, CNN senior law enforcement analyst Andrew McCabe, and CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams. I'm glad you're all here, and I bet we have similar questions as to who, what, when, where. The question of who knew what, when, why. But I want to begin with you, Jamie, because
the answer is we don't know.
Well, there we go. That ends the segment today. Thank you for watching CNN. No, but seriously, I mean, I'm trying to wrap my mind around some of the reporting that's come in over the last 24 hours, even in a statement in Mexico City. And there were, 40 boxes that were handed over, and an abundance of caution from the first batch we learned about. Right. It doesn't necessarily add up about the 10 classified docs or not, whatever level they were. But are these new batch, is this from a different location, or is that part of those 40 boxes that was handed over?
A different location, and let's just call it an undisclosed location at the moment. The first location was his office, part of the Biden Penn Center that had been sitting there for several years. These boxes were locked up. My understanding is 99% of what was in that office was personal. It included things like the burial arrangement documents for Beau Biden's funeral, boxes of condolence letters that had been sent to him as vice president. And that's why his personal lawyer was going through it, because they thought it was all personal and confidential. And then that lawyer gets to a box, he opens it up, there's a folder marked VP Personal, not unimportant. He opens that up, it says classified, he closes it again, And he calls the White House counsel. He says, Houston, we have a problem. They say, call the National Archives. In that first batch, there were about 4 boxes that they found that seemed to be different from all the other 36 personal boxes. And those had both those 10 classified documents and then other documents that were unclassified but fall under the Presidential Records Act. Sorry for the long explanation.
No, it's exactly what we need to hear, because it sounds like, one, there's different locations, Andrew, and where things are, but also an abundance of caution to then just say, here you go, here's the whole kit and caboodle. Right. Of course, the issue, and there are many issues here, are people giving President Biden a pass on the idea of, look, this happens. This is not the response people had for the former President Donald Trump. Of course, the big distinction here is how one behaved once they were aware of it. Is that a distinction that you think should be highlighted more?
It's a very significant distinction, and particularly in the context of the investigation that will follow. So is he getting a pass? No, I don't believe he's going to get a pass. He's going to be investigated, and I would opine likely by a special counsel. There's
already been a U.S. attorney out of Illinois, a Trump holdover appointee, who has given a report.
That's right. And at this point, I think the Attorney General would be well advised to appoint a special counsel over this investigation of how President Biden and his team handled these documents. That's a separate issue. But I think the distinctions between how he and his team have handled this and how President Trump and his lawyers handled the situation at Mar-a-Lago could not be more distinct, right? It's night and day. It's an overabundance of caution, contacting the archives immediately, having them come out the next day to recover all of the documents. There's no parsing of, well, you can look in this room and not in that room, or you can look in the doorway but not go in the boxes. They handed everything over. I think following in that caution, they are now searching other locations where documents could maybe have ended up as well. Contrast that to what's happening right now in the Mar-a-Lago case. You have the Department of Justice fighting it out with Trump's lawyers in court to try to hold them in contempt for failing to do exactly what the Biden team is doing right now, that is going out and searching other locations. You have the Trump team refusing to turn over the names of the 2 private investigators they hired to go out and do their own search, refusing to turn over the names of those investigators because they basically don't want the department to know who they are. So very different reactions.
There is a cooperation element, so it's so important in here. But for the audience perspective, is it all that common? We're hearing about it in real time and says of months about this. But the fact that there's, in the law, we think about custodian of records and chain of custody. Is there really no one out there who is realizing that they're missing some of these top secret documents? How is this continuously happening?
Yeah, I think the big picture point is that we just need a better system in the United States of tracking what happens with classified information after the term of not just a presidential administration, but after people leave government. So that's the big picture thing that affects both of these presidents. Now, as to this question, it's a really important one that you asked, Laura, about is a pass being given to one party or another? And it's really important to focus on, at least with former President Trump, a federal judge had found that there was probable cause to believe that there would be evidence of a series of crimes, including, number 1, obstruction of justice, number 2, removal or mutilation of documents, and 3, mishandling of defense information. And then beyond that, there was the open question of the amount of time, the staggering amount of time over several months, where the former president, and with the aid of his lawyers, was allegedly frustrating the Justice Department's investigation into this.
You mean the search warrant probable cause outlined this very thing?
Yeah, outlined all of this. And so it's just apples and oranges here. Now, look, we may find that President Biden and his attorneys are thwarting the investigation of the Justice Department, but that's simply not the case right now. And if that evidence were to emerge, of course the current president should be investigated, but that's just not the case. And I think this desire to make it one side versus the other thing, you just can't do that to every case, and it's just not the case here.
We are a society that draws distinctions and analogies probably more often than we should. However, there were a lot of questions today, and here just a couple of them that were asked, and of the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, that she declined to answer. Who brought the documents to the office? Did Biden himself bring them? Why did it take so long to disclose discovery to the public? Was the timing related to the midterm elections? Were there any other things found? Is there an audit underway? Was he briefed? When was he briefed? Why were the private lawyers doing this? A number of questions that she declined to answer because she cited an ongoing investigation. But that election part, when the people are finding out, that is going to be something that already has legs and might continue to run as he intends to run for the re-election campaign. Do you have a sense as to why they haven't gotten out ahead of this? I mean, from Monday to now, why not just say more?
Look, I think the issue of why wait so long is a real issue that's going to have political consequences for him. People don't like to hear this, but this is a gift to Donald Trump and the Republicans, and waiting so long is part of that gift. That said, maybe their reasoning is that they were cooperating with an investigation. I don't know, but the political fallout is what it is. I will say, I don't think there's much of a chance that Joe Biden carried these, 40 boxes here. I have a source who's very familiar with the documents. For the record, he is a lifelong registered Republican, and he knows a lot about how these things are handled over the years. He thinks it was very likely an honest mistake. The real question today is, what are these other new documents that were found in these other locations?
Your eyebrow raised at the thought of an honest mistake. Maybe the FBI within you was like, honest mistake. What is this you say about an honest mistake? Go ahead.
No, actually, and Elliot can back me up on this, these sort of referrals from the National Archives or other places about the concerns about classified documents that may be outside of approved facilities, they come to the department and to the FBI all the time. And most of them are resolved without criminal charges. The Bureau's first concern is to find out where is this stuff, let's get it back, and to conduct an assessment as to whether or not there's been damage to national security. Have we compromised sources and methods? Do we need to move people? Do we need to remove technologies from places that they are helping us collect intelligence? And once that's done, that's when you start thinking about, could it have been an honest mistake, i.e., do we not have enough evidence to prove the intent to mishandle documents that's required under those statutes? So there will be a time for all that, and all of these facts that you've mentioned are going to be important.
It's true. It's true.
So I'm going to cut it off right there. So only a few seconds left, but that is the CNN version of events. And now we're going to see what we can find in terms of Fox, and see if we got some Fox action here. I'm looking on YouTube, so let's see. Maybe Fox is up here. Nope. Let's see. Just try that. That's ABC. ABC. Wow. So I guess there's CNBC, but that's not what I'm looking for. ABC, The Guardian. That's a short. And MSNBC, CBS. That's a short. Unbelievable. That's a short. PBS. And this is ridiculous. You're kidding. There's no Fox. All right, so I'm going to have to ask for specifically. All right, so let's see. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go with classified documents found at Biden's private office 6 days ago, and it's about 6 minutes.
Certainly blows a hole in any ability.
Fox News contributor Greg Jarrett says there cannot be two systems of justice in this country. Watch here.
This certainly blows a hole in any ability of Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice to go after Trump for allegedly mishandling classified documents. You can't say, oh, well, it's okay for Bill Clinton to have done that. It's okay for Joe Biden to have done it. It's okay for Hillary Clinton to have mishandled hundreds of classified documents. But, whoa, when Donald Trump does it, even though he may have declassified the documents and under the Presidential Records Act is allowed to maintain control over the documents. No, his name's Donald Trump, so we're going to go after him with a vengeance and threaten him with crimes.
All right, let's bring in South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman, member of the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, good morning to you. Former President Trump is responding to this news. He posted a Truth Social message saying, when is the FBI going to raid the many homes of Joe Biden, perhaps even the White House? These documents were definitely not declassified. Your response to all of this?
Well, I mean, just look at it. It's a double standard, Carly. I mean, double standard for a vice president who doesn't even, as Stephen Miller said, have the power to do that. Yet they raid all these homes. What about Joe Biden? I think he's got numerous homes. When are they going to do that? And you'll see now it was in a locked closet at the Penn Center. And so let's see what the FBI does. And, you know, there's got to be consequences now. You cannot just overlook this as the mainstream media has done with the Bidens. And that's what's so great about what's going on now with our House leadership and the investigation that Jamie Comer is going to have. And hopefully we'll have consequences as well and get to the bottom of it.
Congressman, there's also the timing of all this. When the Mar-a-Lago raid happened, we all saw it in real time as it was happening. It was sort of like a documentary perp walk, if you will. This discovery of Joe Biden's documents happened in November. Why are we just learning about it?
Well, it's a dereliction of duty by the FBI, and, you know, it's unheard of. These are classified documents that have sensitive material that could really endanger this country and all of its citizens. So we'll see what they do, and that's why it's so great to have new leadership and get to the bottom of it and ask questions. We haven't had a oversight meeting since I've been over the Oversight Committee. It's all been just people that should not even, they're not intentionally wanting to find out anything if it relates to this administration.
Well, now that the speaker battle is over, Republicans are moving full steam ahead with your agenda. And your first order of business last night was to rescind billions of dollars in funding for new IRS employees, the 87,000 IRS agents. Vice President Kamala Harris responded to that action, saying, last year, President Joe Biden and I worked with Democrats in Congress to finally make sure everyone pays their fair share. Now is one of their first acts, and the majority House Republicans are rushing to undo that progress and allow too many millionaires, billionaires, and corporations to cheat the system. Is that what you're doing?
You know, it's Carl, it's just empty rhetoric this administration has. You know, when I stepped on the floor last night, there is a stark difference under this administration. It's fine when they gabbled in, it's by responsible, mature adults. Under the Pelosi, it's immature brats who really the only thing they've ever done is collect a paycheck. Now that they've done away with proxy voting, we moved through the rules. There was no division. I think one Republican voted against it, but passed overwhelmingly. So I'm looking forward to working this year, and you will see some meaningful changes that will directly affect American people in a positive way with all the hearings and the people they will call in, and I hope they will have consequences as well.
Okay, that said, Congressman, all indications are that this bill is dead in the Senate because obviously they have a Democratic majority there. What else can the House do to keep those 87,000 IRS agents out of middle-class pockets and bank accounts?
Well, the first step is just what we did. We voted on it, and we're going to hold the Senate accountable. None of us are in the Senate, so we can't control their actions. What our job is to pass it out of the House, which we did, and we'll pass many other things, and then we'll put the heat on the Senate, and we'll hold as many hearings and have as many press conferences asking the Senate, why aren't you moving on this? Why are you not doing anything? That we're not going to have another omnibus that really is an insult to every American taxpayer that is a part of this country. So I look forward to it.
Well, one of the things the Oversight Committee is going to focus on is the Biden family business dealings. James Comer said that we're not investigating Hunter Biden, we're investigating Joe Biden. So lay out what some of the key things the American people can expect. Will there be hearings and will they be public?
Yes, there'll be hearings. We'll have the subpoena power to get the people in we can ask the direct questions. This is serious, Carl. I mean, the ties that the Biden administration appears to have with the Chinese government and compromising the national security of America. We got to get to the bottom of it. The same thing we have to do with big tech and the censorship that took place during the last election. So all the above that we're going to have to have people in. James Comer is a perfect person to lead it, and I think you'll see some startling facts that will occur over the next 6 months to a year.
Congressman Ralph Norman, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, and so then that was the Fox version of what was going on with Joe Biden and the classified documents. So now you have CNN on the one hand, Fox on the other. Now you can decide. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the next chapter in the book, The Rape of the Mind.
The refinement of the rack. All knowledge can be used either for good or for evil, and psychology is not immune to this general law. Psychology has delivered up to man new means of torture and intrusion into the mind. We must be more and more aware of what these methods and techniques are if we are successfully to fight them. They can often be more painful and mentally more paralyzing than the rack. Strong personalities can tolerate physical agony. Often it serves to increase stubborn resistance. No matter what the constitution of the victim, physical torture finally leads to a protective loss of consciousness. But to withstand mental torture, leading to creeping mental breakdown, demands an even stronger personality. What we call brainwashing, a word derived from the Chinese "sai now," is an elaborate ritual of systematic indoctrination, conversion, and self-accusation used to change non-communists into submissive followers of the party. Hunter. Menticide is a word coined by me and derived from mens, the mind, and kadir, to kill. Here, I follow the etymology used by the United Nations to form the word genocide, meaning the systematic destruction of racial groups. Both words indicate the same perverted refinement of the rack, putting it on what appears to be a more acceptable level. But it is 1,000 times worse and 1,000 times more useful to the Inquisitor. Menticide is an old crime against the human mind and spirit, but systematized anew. It is an organized system of psychological intervention and judicial perversion through which a powerful dictator can imprint his own opportunist thoughts upon the minds of those he plans to use and destroy. The terrorized victims finally find themselves compelled to express complete conformity to the tyrant's wishes. Through court procedures, at which the victim mechanically reels off an inner record which has been prepared by his inquisitors during a preceding period, public opinion is lulled and thrown off guard. A real traitor has been punished, people think. The man has confessed. His confession can be used for propaganda, for the Cold War, to instill fear and terror, to accuse the enemy falsely, or to exercise a constant mental pressure upon others. One important result of this procedure is the great confusion it creates in the mind of every observer, friend or foe. In the end, no one knows how to distinguish truth from falsehood. The totalitarian potentate, in order to break down the mind of men, first needs widespread mental chaos and verbal confusion, because both paralyze his opposition and cause the morale of the enemy to deteriorate. Unless his adversaries are aware of the dictator's real aim, from then he can start to build up his system of conformity. In both the Mindszenty and Schwabel cases, we have documented reports of the techniques of menticide as it has been used to break the minds and wills of courageous men. Let us look first at the case of Cardinal Mindszenty, accused of misleading the Hungarian people and collaboration with the enemies, the United States. In his expose of Cardinal Mindszenty's imprisonment, Stephen K. Swift graphically describes 3 typical phases in psychological processing of political prisoners. The first phase is directed toward exhorting confession. The victim is bombarded with questions day and night. He is inadequately and irregularly fed. He is allowed almost no rest and remains in the interrogation chamber for hours on end while his inquisitors take turns with him. Hungry, exhausted, his eyes blurred and aching under unshaded lamps, the prisoner becomes little more than a hounded animal. When the cardinal had been standing for 60 hours, Swift reports, he closed his eyes and remained silent. He did not even reply to questions with denials. The colonel in charge of the shift tapped the cardinal's shoulder and asked why he did not respond. The cardinal answered, "End it all. Kill me. I am ready to die." He was told that no harm would come to him, that he could end it all simply by answering certain questions. By Saturday forenoon, he could hardly be recognized. He asked for another drink, and this time it was refused. His feet and legs had swollen to such proportions that they caused him intense pain. He fell down several times. To the horrors the accused victim suffers from without must be added to the horrors from within. He is pursued by the unsteadiness of his own mind, which cannot always produce the same answer to a repeated question. As a human being with a conscience, he is pursued by possible hidden guilt feelings, however pious he may have been, that undermine his rational awareness of innocence. The panic of the brainwashee is the total confusion he suffers about all concepts. His evaluations and norms are undermined. He cannot believe in anything objective anymore except in the dictated and indoctrinated logic of those who are more powerful than he. The enemy knows that, far below the surface, human life is built up of inner contradictions. He uses this knowledge to defeat and confuse the brainwashee. The continual shift of interrogators makes it ever more impossible to believe in consecutive thinking. Hardly has the victim adjusted himself to one inquisitor when he has to change his focus of alertness to another one. Yet this inner clash of norms and concepts, this inner contradiction of ideologies and beliefs, is part of the philosophical sickness of our time. As a social being, the cardinal is pursued by the need for good human relationships and companionship. The constantly reiterated suggestion of his guilt urges him toward confession. As a suffering individual, he is blackmailed by an inner need to be left alone and undisturbed, if only for a few minutes. From within and without, he is inexorably driven towards signing the confession prepared by his persecutors. Why should he resist any longer? There are no visible witnesses to his heroism. He cannot prove his moral courage and rectitude after his death. The core of the strategy of menticide is the taking away of all hope, all anticipation, all belief in a future. It destroys the very elements which keep the mind alive. The victim is utterly alone. If the prisoner's mind proves too resistant, narcotics are given to confuse it. Mescaline, marijuana, morphine, barbiturates, alcohol. If his body collapses before his mind capitulates, he receives stimulants, benzodrine, caffeine, chloramine, all of which help to preserve his consciousness until he confesses. Many of the narcotics and stimuli which ultimately help to induce mental dependency and enforced confusion also can create an amnesia, often a complete forgetting of the torture itself. The torture techniques achieve the desired effect, but the victim forgets what has actually happened during the interrogation. The clinicians who do therapeutic work with amphetamine derivatives, which, when injected into the bloodstream, help patients to remember long-forgotten experiences, are familiar with the drug's ability to bring soothing forgetfulness of the period during which the patient was drugged and questioned. This continual attack on human consciousness and guilt by unconscious self-accusations is brilliantly depicted by Franz Kafka in The Trial. In this novel, the victim never knows of what he is accused, but his inner guilt leads him to conviction. Kafka anticipated the age of blackmailing into confession. His novel was written before the 1930s. The same theme has been treated from a psychological point of view by Theodor Reich in his Confession Compulsion and the Need for Punishment. See Chapter 3. Next, the victim is trained to accept his own confession, much as an animal is trained to perform tricks. False admissions are reread, repeated, hammered into his brain. He's forced to reproduce his memory again and again, the fancied offenses, fictitious details, which ultimately convince him of his criminality. In the first stage, he is forced into mental submissiveness by others. In the second stage, he has entered a state of auto-hypnosis, convincing himself of fabricated crimes. According to Swift, the questions during the interrogation now dealt with the details of the cardinal's confession. First, his own statements were read to him. Then statements of other prisoners accused of complicity with him. Then elaborations of these statements. Sometimes the cardinal was morose, sometimes greatly disturbed and excited. When he answered all questions willingly, repeated all sentences once, twice, or even 3 times when he was told to do so. Latio. In the third and final phase of interrogation and menticide, the accused, now completely conditioned and accepting his own imposed guilt, is trained to bear false witness against himself and others. He doesn't have to convince himself any more through auto-hypnosis. He only speaks his master's voice. He is prepared for trial, softened completely. He becomes remorseful and willing to be sentenced. He is a baby in the hands of his inquisitors, fed as a baby and soothed by words as a baby. A more extended survey of the different psychological stages in menticide and brainwashing will be given at the end of Chapter 4.
So this was the refinement of the rack from the book The Rape of the Mind. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bellanova, a children's choir that does an excellent rendition of Memories. And I'm dedicating it to Diamond of Diamond and Silk. Diamond passed away a few days ago.
Here's to the ones that we got. Cheers to the wish you were here, but you're not. 'Cause the dreams bring back all the memories of everything we've been through. Close to the ones here today. Close to the ones that we lost on the way. 'Cause the dreams bring back all the memories. And the memories bring back you. There's a time that I remember when I did not know no pain. When I believed in forever and everything would stay the same. Now my heart feel like December. When somebody say your name. 'Cause I can't reach out to call you, but I know I will one day. Yeah. Everybody hurts sometimes. Everybody hurts someday. Yeah. But everything will be alright. Go raise your voice and say, hey. Here's to the ones that we got. Cheers to the wish you were here, but you're not. 'Cause the dreams bring back all the memories of everything we've been through. Close to the ones here today. Close to the ones that we lost on the way. 'Cause the dreams bring back all the memories. And the memories bring back you. Memories bring back you. There's a time that I remember when I never felt so lost. When I felt that all the hatred was too powerful to stop. Now my heart feels like an ember and it's lighting up the dark. I'll carry these torches for you, but you know I'll never drop. Yeah. Everybody hurts sometime. Everybody hurts someday. Hey, hey. But everything will be alright. Go and raise your voice and say, hey. Here's to the ones that we got. Cheers to the wish you were here, but you're not. 'Cause the dreams bring back all the memories of everything we've been through. Close to the ones here today. Close to the ones that we
Thank you, thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. Until next time, remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.